Hello and welcome to Truth C Squared podcast. My name is Shemez. Joined as always, good friend, co-host, you know the deal, Colin Carlson. So we are gonna have kind of a mishmash of different ideas and topics this episode. And I wanted to at least start it. One of the comments in our last video is like kind of giving a synopsis of the lost episode, which I do have audio for. Um, But essentially, it was about Tyler Vela, who no one probably knows who that is here. It was a friend of Colton's that he met in theological circles, I guess, who was a Calvinist, like us. Which I don't even know if I'm a Calvinist. I might just be a reformer, by the way. I don't think I'm a Calvinist. Anyways, it's all the same stuff. He basically walked away from the faith, and we talked about how for us that almost seems like completely foreign concept, like given what we understand about God and what we've experienced in our lives so far. It's like how does that happen? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. And I even had a close friend who was my worship leader at my church who kind of went through the same thing, like not entirely walking away from the faith, but definitely like walking away from church and had to figure things out for herself and all these other things. um I just don't get it. And it was kind of like just discussing reasons why we're like that, why it's so hard for us to relate to people who go through those issues. Um, but it got emotional because when I start describing like my reasons for believing in God, it it's like so encompassing to my history, my story of like how I conceptualize what has happened to me, and it's also like huge building blocks for the reasons that I have the life I have nowadays. Like, I built basically everything important in my life is built off, I would say, God's blessing and direction in my life. So it's really easy for me to like believe in God because so much of, like I said, my history and my present day situation is a direct result of my relationship with God. So if you like meet me in real life and you spent any time getting to know me, you would know I'm a Christian without a shadow of a doubt because it naturally comes up in my conversations. Like, it's a part of my everyday life. It's like inseparable to who I am as a person. So for me to say like, oh, I don't believe in God anymore, I'm walking away from my faith. I'm also like, I would say like, okay, 95% of my life up to this point literally makes no sense. Zero sense. Like, it's built off of really bad reasons. And it'd be really hard for someone in my position where things are relatively going really well, um, to think that. So it's not like, I'm not saying like prosperity gospel, like my life has turned out so well, that's why I believe in God. It's like, I think the fact that he's secured me through such bad times and like negative experiences that happened like over and over again, especially when I was younger, to to get through that unscathed relatively and miraculously, I would say. Like, how would I explain that now if I don't have God to explain that? Like, I'm just super lucky. Like, I'm just an ultra moral, upright person, even though I know behind the scenes I'm not. So it was just kind of explaining that. Um, that for believers, like I even saw a post today in our group, it's like, oh, the more sophisticated I get my study of God and like the reasons I believe, the more sophisticated my doubt is becoming. Like, who else can relate? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. What doubts? What are we talking about here, guys? I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me because I'm very just tied to the gospel. It's I mean, I've been a believer since I was 3 years old. It's one of my first memories. And it was vivid and powerful and inspirational and had a long lasting effect in my life, obviously, to the point where I've never had doubts. And I've only seen God show up over and over again in my own life. So, yeah, it'd be be akin to suicide for me to say that, honestly, at this point. So that was kind of what it was about. What a happy note. I don't know if you have anything to add, Colton. I don't even know if you remember what we talked about, but that was essentially what it was.
I have nothing to add.
So the other thing that we wanted to talk about a little bit was just not even theology, honestly. We wanted to talk about relationships because we are beacons of perfection. They're said when it comes to marriages. I'm kidding. But I'm also not kidding because at least for me, like I have a freaking awesome relationship, and that's because I've married an awesome girl. Mostly, I don't take hardly any credit for it. Um, but I know that a lot of, at least not a lot, but I'll be honest, I have no idea who watches this stuff, but I think it's people our age or younger, either like you know, in high school, graduating high school, in college, or just graduating college. But it's that age where people are don't have girlfriends, have a girlfriend, and are thinking about getting married or newly married, essentially. Um, so we want to talk about at least what we think, just a couple of things about how do you go about that being successful, because right now the success rate in marriage is what, like less than 20%. And if you want to throw in relationships too, all of your failed relationships before you get to a marriage, it's probably like less than 1% chance of like you go on a date with someone you don't really know and you like get into like a boyfriend girlfriend type relationship, that turning into a successful marriage and a marriage that lasts your whole life, very rare. um it's like a unicorn nowadays. um so how do you get there? I mean, we're not going to give you a step-by-step program. We're just going to give you a few thoughts that are, I mean, going to be very specific to us, but might be helpful to you too. So I know the first thing I wanted to mention, even though it's silly, is if you want to find a good spouse, you have to be a good spouse, first off. Um, and what that means, especially as like, I'm imagining I'm talking to like an early 20-year-old guy, um, you need to get your crap together. Like, emotionally, spiritually, and obviously physically. If you want to attract the kind of girl that's going to be a long lasting spouse, someone who respects you, someone who's going to be good to you, you need to be respectful and you need to be a good dude overall. Um, and I think the problem, a lot, like when you say that, a lot of people are going to hear, like, oh, I got to get my bread up. Like, I got to have a nice job. I got to have a nice car, a nice house. Like, those things help. Like, trust me, that is going to be attractive to some women, gold diggers. But what's more attractive to the women that you want to be attracting is being compassionate, is being emotionally mature, being able to be humble, vulnerable to a woman. Um, Also having a lot of self-respect for yourself. You're not going to let women manipulate you, push you over. Um, I think some of that has to do with sexual morality too. You're not a man whore. You're not, you know, taking the bait to sleep with a girl right off the bat. Like, you're not even interested in women who are like that, to be honest with you. Um, and these are all like little things that add up to. So you're not attracting promiscuous women who are just there to have a good time because you're going to reject them. You're not attracting women who are toxic because I would hope you just don't have, I don't care how attractive they are, I hope you don't have the tolerance to even deal with that, as like you have your own internal peace and solitude. Why would you let in a toxic woman and ruin that? So hopefully you're rejecting those people too. And the type of girls that are going to be left over are I would say the women that are going to respect you, the women that are um, the type of partners that are going to lift you up instead of tear you down. And that's essentially, I think, what me and Colton have both found in our spouses. It's a woman that enhances who you are and encourages who you are, and like celebrates who you are. So it's not a constant like ego battle between you. It's a mutual respect and friendship that allows for personal growth even after the fact of getting married. And I think that that's essentially the main goal that you want. So, like I said, the way you start that is to be that type of person for other women. And I think it starts before you even date. Like what's your relationship to, like, if you have a sister, what's your relationship to just the women in your life that you're maybe not attracted to, or even if you are not in relationships with, like how are you treating them? How do you think about them? Like there's a million different, guy girl relationships before you enter into a relationship with your wife. That you have opportunities to just be a good, solid man too. And if you think about it, after you get married, those are the types of relationships that you have with women after you get married. So it's like might as well practice being a respectful, upright guy, and then you know it makes getting married a whole lot easier after, because your relationships to women aren't all sexually based. So as a couple tidbits to start off with. I don't know how helpful or coherent it was. I'm just riffing. So, Colton, what do you got?
And so I just pulled up the stats, divorce statistics and facts from lawyers.com. And so I just kind of wanted to read off
Oh
some
gosh.
stats. Some of them are what we've expected, but some of them are kind of like, whoa. So, so here is just a couple. So, the divorce rate per 1,000 married women is nearly double of that of 1960, but down from all-time high of 22.6% in the early 1980s. Almost 50% of all marriages in the United States, I think it's probably like 57, 53, something like that, will end in divorce or separation. And then researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages end in divorce. 60% of second marriages end in divorce, and 73% of third marriages end in divorce. To just give you a brief idea of like how much divorce happens in the United States, every 42 seconds there is at least one divorce in America. Every 42 seconds. That totals to about 2,046 divorces per day and 14,364 divorces per week, and nearly 1 million divorces uh, per year, three quarters of a million divorces per year. So every 16 seconds, there's a marriage in the United States. So that's nice. But there are nearly three divorces in the time it takes for a couple to recite their wedding vows, which is roughly 2 minutes.
Yikes.
And then here's this one's kind of cheeky. There are more than 172 divorces that occur during your typical romantic comedy, which is roughly 2 hours. So I mean, it's just kind of like it's funny, but at the same time,
It's a
so
problem.
so it is a problem. So if those of you don't know, Shmez and I do are married to our first. So I've been married for about 6.5 years. Shmez just celebrated his eighth wedding anniversary yesterday. So,
Mm-hmm.
yay. But he has three kids. I have one kid. Now, the idea is like, why as we're Gen Y. So why? Because most of the people around us, girls and women and boy, whatever, both men, women, our friends usually get married, usually, not always, but usually get married later in life. So like 25, almost close to 30. My own sister's not even married yet, and she's way past 30. Maybe it's because she just hasn't found anybody, but the vast majority, I think, don't get married because they have this idea of they want to play the field. They want to just live their life a little bit more, more exciting, and they don't have to be chained down to anything. Uh, and I think it's safe to say that both Shemez and I have never Never have thought that. Shemaz got married when you were how old? 20,
Yeah,
I think.
I turned 20 like 6 weeks before I got married. So I was very young, 20-year old.
Right. And I got married. I married Diana within 8 months of meeting her,
Hmm. And I want to put a
like
caveat on
knowing who
this.
she was.
Caveat. It wasn't lack of opportunities on either of our ends that we didn't like feel tied down. I just want to say that. It's like this wasn't the first woman that threw themselves at me or Colton. Look at us. We're beautiful. All right. We had plenty of opportunities growing up. Um, I just know some people are like, "Oh, you married the first girl that ever gave you attention." I'm like, no, actually, I
But I
avoided
think
like all of them in high school. Thank you very much.
yeah. So I've had many my students know this because I've told them not all the time, but some of them do. But I'm pretty open about it. But I've had many relationships in high school. Shemaz can tell you, I've had many relationships. Well, not in high school, I guess, but in middle school, and then a couple of relationships in high school. But and I had some serious ones and not so serious ones, and ones that I think God he used providentially in order to transform me into His child. But then others were really successful, just didn't work out. And maybe I think today's day and age, at least when I talk to my students, teenagers, they don't understand that. They don't understand that a relationship can be successful. It can be good. It can be solid. But the problem is, it just doesn't work out, and they think that like, well, if it's successful, it should work out, right? Or something along those lines. And the idea is no,
Hmm.
that it's just because it's a good relationship doesn't mean that it is the best relationship for you.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a really, really good distinction that I've learned in my last relationship before Diana that I really didn't know. But then after it ended, I was like, this is good. This
Yeah.
is good. I just wish we would talk more a bit, but I don't know. What do you have to say with that?
Yeah. We are not believers in like the one, the elusive
Right.
soulmate. Would you? Um, I mean, I believe you can almost marry anybody and pretty much make
Right.
it work. And I put a caveat on at least if they're like an actual believer, like and serious about their faith. I think you can marry anyone like that. At least I could. Um, and yeah, I would say like even I had like one serious relationship before I got married. And a couple of like not serious, like, you know, superficial middle school one with a Mormon girl who I held hands with once and was super nervous and it didn't work out.
Both had that.
Yeah. And then one in 10th grade where it's just like she liked me and it was purely physical. And then she left me like a month later for a different guy or something like that. So it wasn't a whole lot, but um, I think the relationship before I met Susie, it was like I met her right before 11th grade. No, yeah, before 11th grade. And then that lasted until my like middle of my freshman year of college. So like a really like formative time in my life where most people would be dating a lot of different girls, but for me I was just laser focused on that one for those 3 years, I guess, or 4 years. And I would say that that also was a very successful relationship that didn't work out. Um but it was like I think it came to like differences in what we wanted in life, and it sucks that we didn't know that beforehand. But when you're so young like that, you're gonna run into those issues to where your girl wants a career, wants to travel, wants to have a lot of freedom, and then you're like, well, I'm thinking about wanting to get married and like eventually having kids and like settling down. Like, and that's just gonna happen where things clash, and it's just bad timing. Like maybe if I met that girl when she was, in her later 20s, it would have been fine. It would have been 100% fine to have a beautiful relationship. But the fact that we were trying to do that at such a young age, it just didn't work out. Um, and that's fine. Like, and I think that part of the reason why me and Susie worked out so well was because the timing of what we both wanted just happened to line up. All the pieces happened to fall together perfectly over and over and over and over again. And that's what led to us getting married. Um, was good timing essentially. So, and some of that is like, well, it sounds like it's like based on luck. I'm like, well, a little bit. It really is. For you to at least
I'll
find a
call it
six.
Providence,
I mean,
not luck.
I would call it that too. I would call it like God, you working things out for me. That's how I describe it, and how I honestly think about it too. Um, but that is a sad reality, is that you can find the right person at the wrong time, and that sucks and it hurts. But also, if you want to have a successful relationship, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and get hurt. Because I know that there's a lot of people that
Right.
get in a relationship, it doesn't work out, and they get bitter, and they get closed off, and they get vengeful, and they start having very weird thoughts about women, as like, all women are bitches. Like I've heard that a lot from guys my age. Um, but it's because they're bitter about being hurt in the past. And I think if you want to be successful, and part of what it means, like being courageous, is, yeah, this might be horrible for me and I might get hurt, but I have to at least put myself out there and open up to somebody again, even after it doesn't work out. So that's going to happen, unfortunately.
I will I will say I don't think I 100% agree, although I understand your sentiment, but I don't necessarily agree with it's always you could have the right woman at a or the right spouse per se. 'Cause we're not. We're talking about women just because we're guys, but
Yeah.
um, you could be listening to this and you may be a female, so just you could find the right spouse, but wrong time. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think that there's if you remember from that 70s show, and anyone who watches that 70s show or knows me, I like that 70s show. And when Eric, sorry to spoil it, but when Eric and Donna actually break up for the first time over a promise ring at the end of season 3, they had this argument. And it's really this, to me, the more I thought about it, because I'm philosophy minded and I think about it a lot, there's really, the writers of the show have nailed down exactly what happens in relationships in two different categories. First category is relationships that say there's someone in the relationship or this philosophy in the relationship that says if we're together, we're together. I'll do this, you do that, and if we just happen to be together at the end of things, if we happen to get married, then cool. Like that's then we're meant to be in some sense. It just kind of worked out. But then there's another philosophy in relationships, and I think that there's only these two personally. But their other philosophy is no, we'll be together if we say we're together. We'll make the commitment and we're together. Yes, we're going to have struggles. Yes, this is going to happen. You want this and I want this, but we're going to sacrifice things because we want to be together, and we'll be together because we say we're going to be together. So Eric was that philosophy and Donna was the other philosophy. And what happened? Of course, they clashed and then they broke up, right? And I've had many relationships like that before. I think Shemez would also say it's very similar to his past relationships in some case. So I think the idea is, will you? What I'm pushing back on is this idea that you can meet the right person, the right spouse at the wrong time, sort of. But then again, I also want to say I think that if you want to be with that person, then you can fight for that person, and you should
Hmm.
fight for that person in a courageous, respectful, loving, charitable way. And if they want to be with you, they'll also fight for you. And so some people just don't feel like fighting. So I think your relationship with Krista, I think, was one of those cases,
Yeah, I was
from
willing
my
to fight,
understanding.
and she wasn't. And I
Right.
guess like to say like right spouse, wrong time, like not necessarily like a good woman or a good relationship potentially, and it just doesn't work out. Like I feel like there's a lot of like I can look at, you know, a whole group of girls that if circumstances would have been a little bit different, I could have seen myself like going with them instead. Is what I was saying, but it's like circumstances made it work out, so it didn't happen. But
Right.
even if I was with one of them, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad relationship. It would still be okay. Like,
Well,
um,
here's a question, because my wife actually told me the question about a month ago. It really concerned her, and then I started thinking about it, and it didn't concern me to begin with, but now it has over the month. Um, would you, because we both don't believe in soulmates,
mhm.
so would you still, all things considered, in the past, or actually, let me actually put it this way, because Diane and I put it in different ways. If for whatever reason, right now in your life, if you weren't with Susie and yet you met her, and if the circumstances were roughly the same ish, would you marry her again?
Hell yeah, in a heartbeat. Oh my god, of course I would. If I met Susie today, right? Like I didn't know her at
Right.
all. I mean, she has 3 kids. That I don't know the kid situation how that would be, but um, I'd be like, "Hi, my name is Shemez. Like, I'm gonna go buy a wedding ring. You wait right here, and like, I'll be right back." Like, I'm dead ass about that too. Dead ass, bro. Like the fact that like I knew Susie obviously before I got married for a couple of years, but I didn't really know her like as a person. She's very like reserved, closed off to me. And that was partly because she was being respectful to the fact that I was dating Krista. So it's like there's no reason for us to really like get to know each other that well. Um, but like without that restriction, we were together within hours of reconnecting. Like it was no, there's no way.
Yeah,
I
so I
yeah.
think I've asked a couple of, I think I've asked a couple of students, I'm not sure, I can't remember. I thought about it. And my wife, when she posited the question, I actually, and I want you to hear me out. I actually said I don't know if I'd marry her again. Now she wants to think, and I totally respect it. It's similar to you. She wants to be able to say, you know, yeah, for sure. Like I would totally marry him again. Um, because intuitively we want to say like, oh, that means you've met. That's a good measuring factor of whether like a good rule of thumb or tool for you to be able to say, yeah, I've met the right one, and that we're supposed to be together. And then I just said, I don't know. I think I would. I'm not sure because I'm not in the same circumstances. Yeah, the circumstances would be different, a little bit similar to when we met, but I'm not sure if I'd actually marry her again. And I don't know if it's necessarily wrong to say that. If And the reason why I bring this up is because I think a lot of younger, even our generation, maybe even a little older than us, but then younger than us, the generation below us, definitely wants to be able to think that that's like a soulmate kind of thing. I think that Dinah is not my soulmate. I could marry someone different, and I could either have a very very good relationship with that person if I married the other person, or I could have a better relationship than with Diana, or I could have a worse relationship than with Diana. I'm just not sure. And so I think, yes, I think I would be inclined to say, yes, I'd marry her. But just because I say no doesn't mean that I'm just this awful person. And the reason why I think that's the case is because I don't think soulmates exist. And I think love is something that you choose actively over and over and over again, day by day. Like you literally choose to marry that person all the
Mhm.
time in the littlest of decisions. And to me, that's what I'm choosing now. If I was in a different circumstance in which I was not with Diana, I just met her, I may not want to choose that um, in that circumstance. And I think that's fine. That doesn't mean I don't love her now.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I don't care about her intensely now and I love my family now. What do you think?
No, like I would think that if I asked Suze that question, she'd be like, well, I'd really have to think about it. Like, no, like for real, because like I'm not as attractive as I was. Like, let's pretend I don't have kids though. I have an
Okay.
okay job. I make okay money. Like, I don't know how I'd want to say if I was still single at 28 that I would be like hyper focused on like looking attractive, on like developing skills that would attract women, like my music stuff. Um, like I don't know, like I would be very thirsty if I wasn't married at this age. Um,
Funny.
and so I feel like I'd be a way different person because right now I'm in dad mode, and I have been for like 5 years. So that dad mode is very different from I'm a bachelor type. You know what I'm
Right.
talking about. So I feel like I'd be
Right.
radically different. But given that, at least in me and Susie's circumstance, I would say if we're if we're in the same room together and someone's getting pregnant, like I'm sorry, like she is irresistible to me. So it would be very easy. Like I said, my answer would be like, heck yes. Um, but that's like more based on like superficial reasons than anything else. Because I still believe Susie's like one of the most attractive women on the planet. Like period. Just like on an objective level, like wow, to me, and most people would like, oh, that's cute, but like, is she really like? I'm like, yeah, no, like, no, she actually is like to me. I'm not kidding about that. So, and I feel like that's very rare. Because even seeing like the different, even women I was interested in, they don't hold, they have nothing on Susie in terms of looks to me. So that's why my answer would be that way. And obviously, like, if I'm physically attracted to her, like to that extent, um, and then getting to know her, like going on a date and talking, like every time me and Susie go out together, we have so much fun and we laugh. We're having a good time. It's funny, like inside jokes the whole time. Like it's relaxing. It's just chill. Like and it's always been like that between me and her. Like even when we didn't know each other that well, it was just like one of the first things I did with her. We drove like 45 minutes to a Walmart to pick out pillows, and drove back. Had the time of my life. So much fun. And that was when I barely knew her and I wasn't even interested in her romantically. Like it was just awesome. So for me, I just biochemically speaking, I'm wired to be attracted to her. So and I find that extremely rare. That's why like I basically dropped everything in my life and wanted to be with this woman. It's like who wouldn't? Like that's the winning lottery ticket is right there. Like you
Right. I
win
think
the
I have
game
a
of life if I
I
can
think I
be
have a
with her.
friend that's very similar in Florida that he basically dropped his whole life just to be with this girl. And I asked him why. And then I think his exact words, I'm totally paraphrasing, I don't really remember, but it was like a decade ago. But he was like, "Have you seen her?"
Yeah.
Like, I was like, "I've seen her, and she's a cutie, right?" And I think she's really good looking. But I mean, is that literally all you're basing like this on? And he's like, "Yeah." And they're married, and they have a kid together, and they're about to have another one on the way. Like they love their family and everything. And so, and they've never been with anybody else, never kissed anybody else, never
Oh
slept
snap.
with anybody else, never been with anybody else. It's just them. That is rare.
Yeah.
That is extremely rare, and they have the time of their life. But yeah, it's something very similar. Now, is it bad if you don't have that?
No.
No. And I think that this is the reason why I bring it up is because again, from my perspective, because I literally hang out with teenagers all day long. The idea and the relationships I see and what I hear and what they show me on TikTok and all this stuff is that unless you have what you have with Susie, you're doing it wrong. And the idea is that's great. Yes, that is like rare though. And should you want that in a spouse? Yes. But will you always have that in the spouse? No. Does that mean you're doing something wrong? No. It just means, I think, that, again, timing and for us, because we believe in God's providence has given you such a great, tremendous blessing that He doesn't necessarily give everybody. And
Yeah.
that's, I'm not saying
Well,
my wife is not a blessing, by the way. I'm not saying that. What I'm just saying is, I don't have that same level of I would, in a heartbeat, actively choose to marry her again in the same circumstance. I probably would, yes, but not like the same certainty that you have with
I
Susie.
mean, I feel like you, when you first met Diana, you did have that same reaction that I had to Susie. So I feel like maybe you say that you wouldn't. I feel like if you met
Maybe I'm
her,
just being facetious or
I think
humble.
you're not. Yeah, I if you're just granted, like you're single, right? Like
Right.
for a long time, 28 years old, you would be all over her instantly. You'd be like,
Perhaps,
dude,
yeah.
I saw this girl, bro. I'm telling you. You'd be on the phone with me 5 seconds after hanging out with her. I know it. But
But by the way, those who know our relationship really well, that's exactly what both Shemez and I did to the other person.
yeah,
More so me because he was in camp, but he told me after camp
yeah.
when he could actually talk. But as soon as we could, we're like, bro, this girl dog.
yeah.
Marrying this girl. And we're like, what's her name? But
Uh
yeah, I think that's true.
I think part of like the slippery slope though is when you think that about your spouse is that like as you get older, things change.
Yeah.
Physically speaking, like Susie's had 3 kids. Um, so obviously her body doesn't look the same, but I mean she's still like, I mean she's in size 2 pants. Like she's in phenomenal shape. But that's not always the case with people. Like some women that have kids like never recover, and I know after she had her second, my second, our second, I don't know, like she gained a lot of weight and just didn't lose it, and like she was bigger for a while. I didn't notice or really care that much. um and then now that we had our third and she like lost a bunch of weight and it stayed off, like seeing the pictures is like way different. So like the physical side of it, once childbearing gets involved, it does affect that. And if that is like key to your relationship, like being uberly overly physically attracted to your spouse, that is 1,000% going to change as you guys get older. Kids are not.
Right.
Like you like to think, you know, work out, stay in shape, like stay sexy and all this. I
But
want.
even if they do lose a lot of, the woman will never lose everything, um, especially if they have a C-section or a vaginal birth. But even then, they get older.
Yeah, they get
You get
older.
wrinkles. I mean,
You
just
could have
you just
health
age,
issues. Like
right?
all sorts of stuff comes up. So like while it's nice to be like hopelessly attracted to your spouse, you're not always going to be hopefully hopelessly attracted to them. Like circumstances change. And if that's like the biggest thing drawing you to them, when they lose that, what do you got left? Like what else is here? And I think that that's kind of what I want to talk about next is because um I think one of the most important things for a man in a relationship, in my estimation, is that they need to feel respected. And what do I mean by that? I think it's um the main point of it is that your wife obviously respects you, and what that looks like is she does everything in her power to like enhance who you are, like support who you are. Cuz you see all of these dead relationships where basically the woman is just tearing down the man constantly or belittling them. Like they're getting into the, you know, ego battles constantly and the woman is just
Right.
winning. And at least with my parents that I grew up around, My mom just dominated the crap out of my dad, and she called him stupid. You know, like she disrespect him. She talked bad about him to people, and he just lowered his head and silently took it, and just he's
Yeah,
like,
it's
well,
terrible.
at least she's not cheating on me. Like, at least she takes good care of the kids. Like she makes good food. I mean, they have a good. I would say overall, it's a good relationship. But I was extremely sensitive to that when I was dating Krista, and then again when I was dating Susie. Like, I had a lot of moments early in my relationship with Susie where I would dead ass be like, "Don't talk to me like that. No, like that's not okay."
Right.
And I there's a lot of instances where I had to stand up for myself and I had to set boundaries for like what I would consider disrespectful. And it sounds douchey, right? Like I understand like that sounds bad. But it's like if we have a problem with me, don't start bashing me in front of all my friends or texting other people about me or whatever. Like our business should be our business first. And if you
Right.
need to like reach out for like guidance and assistance, like let's reach out to like elders in our church or somebody that like you're really close to and respect and actually is in like a good relationship or married for a
Right.
while, someone who has something to say. And we never I didn't have to sit down and tell her that like this is what you need to do, but that's like the feeling I thought. And that's not because she like bashed me in front of other people. This is like kind of what I told her before we got married, is like what I kind of would expect her and how we handle problems. I'm like, I just don't believe in like, you know, bringing up issues and problems with like other people and like consistently like complaining about your spouse. Like that should be between
Right.
you and your spouse. Cuz how long have we I've been married 8 years. We've been friends forever. You're my best friend. I literally tell you everything. How many times have I gone to you complaining about Susie?
I don't know. We don't talk that much. But no, never.
Never. Never. And
Uh, and I don't think I've done that either.
no.
And even if we have, the only issue that I've gone to Shmez for is maybe things that like puzzles in our relationship with Diana or Diana and I's relationship, where I need to try to figure out. But I've already talked to her first.
Yes.
Uh, I've already talked to her. Anything that I tell Shemez has already been talked with Diana weeks ago or days ago. She already knows everything. And this is something that I actually caught on, I think within the first week of my marriage. I realized that even in my mind, I wasn't even talking to anybody else. But in my mind, I was like, "Oh, I can't believe she would do that. Why would she do that?" I think she spent like over $70 on the grocery bill or something. And at that time, we were freaking poor and we didn't have any money. And I was so pissed and like, doesn't she know like we just don't have that money and
You're
blah blah blah.
talking. I gotta
And I
use
was
the
just being,
restroom.
selfish and stuff. But I was like pretty upset. But I wasn't even talking to anybody about it. And so I was just talking to myself, like in my mind about it. And I had to catch myself and be like, "No, I can't do this. I can't. If I have a problem with her, I can't even talk to myself about my problem with her because then I'm just going to wallow in how upset she
Resentment.
made me. Right,
Resentment.
is resentment. And so instead, I'm going to tell her. And lo and behold, before I even brought it up when I went home, after she texted me and I didn't text her back and I went home, she straight up apologized. Like, hey, I know like you're concerned with the money and this was totally my fault. I'll do better next time. I'll actually like keep track of the bills when what I'm buying next time. And she was super apologetic. I didn't have to say anything. And I think this is what you're getting at with this idea of like respect, because with my family, it was something very similar to both Shmez and I had mothers that were very corrosive and coercive emotionally to our fathers. At the same time, of course, we're not just being misogynistic. It's also that men have, I think, personally, a higher calling, a higher standard than the women in the relationship, and that is that we ought to love them as Christ loved the church. So, of course, since we're Christians, yes, wives are supposed, as the famous passage in Ephesians 5 says, yeah, 5, right, 5 or 6, that wives are supposed to submit to the husbands. So we can translate that word as submit as in like being respectful to them, treating them and honoring them in a way that boosts their confidence and their overall stamina, emotional stamina. At the
Hmm.
same time, we have that is only one verse that Paul spent. The rest of the verses are spent on what the men is supposed to do with the wife, and that is to love them, to sacrifice for them, to make them pure, emotionally, spiritually, without blemish. That is such a higher calling, um, and it sucks sometimes. And of course, Shemez and I aren't perfect.
Hmm.
Uh, I say it sucks because we're not perfect, and Shemez and
Yeah,
I both will tell you that we fail
yeah,
a lot,
yeah,
but we learn from it. And the more we love our wives in the way that Christ is supposed to love the church, we start to see that it's almost natural. It's almost like it's God given
yeah,
that the wife will want to actually engage, be interested in what the husband's doing,
yeah,
and support him in you know whatever they are doing at the
yeah.
time, whether it's gaming, whether it's just their job, whether it's their
Theology.
thoughts, their prayers, their hobbies, their likes, whatever. Um, but I think it starts with us personally,
Yeah.
um,
And
to
my
love
point for
them
like
in a
bringing
way.
up respect is like overall, like you keep your dirty laundry between you and your spouse.
Right,
And that it's not even like a hard thing to do. It should be like a natural, easy way that you guys are resolving problems is that it stays between you two, and if you guys can't resolve it, then you go to people you both love and respect and you get guidance from them on how to handle
right,
that situation. It is not aired out on Facebook. It's not brought up constantly in conversations with her friends or you bashing her to your friends. Like that is the part that like I feel like just kills relationships so fast. And if you're a man and your woman is like like saying like, oh man, he doesn't work hard, like, he's got a crappy job, like he's not taking the trash out, like he's not blah. Even if all that's true, even if it's true, like a woman like airing that out to the public, it does not motivate you to want to fix those things necessarily. What would motivate you more, I feel like, is if the woman is sitting you down and being like I need you to step up. Like I, you know, need this type of support from you. Like it's hurting our relationship and I feel like it's an easy fix. Like if you just do this, you just do this. Like and obviously there's going to be crappy men out there where that doesn't work. Um
right.
but I'm assuming this is a decent dude. Like that is going to go a long way. And especially if you showing appreciation for even doing the little stupid things. Like it
Right.
it's like it's almost like trying to like get a toddler to do something like words of affirmation like oh like thank you for doing that like it's like oh you finally took the trash out like that took you a while like it's a simple thing it's like thank you for doing that even though it took you a bit like keep that part to yourself though. um
Yeah, I
but
think
yeah.
that's a great point. For my and it's kind of funny because my wife and I actually have like inside jokes where we know when it's too far, when we push each other, and that extra tidbit is actually meant to hurt the other person. Um, but honestly, we sometimes say it to each other because we know it's not going to hurt the other person, and we
Mm-hmm.
just say it because like we're both competitive. Like for instance, today even the shower door. So the shower door, it slides, and if you keep it open, the water just stays between the two doors constantly, and it never airs out, and it could build mold. So I just told her, "Hey, can you shut the shower door when you're done with it?" She's like, "Yeah, for sure." And then one time I did it, I didn't shut the shower door, and she sent me a picture like in the middle of the day, and she's like, "LOL." And I'm like, "Ah." So she did it, and then now it's like I'll send pictures to her because she always forgets, and I'm not mad. It's just I send pictures to her when I see that she didn't close it, and I'll just say LOL, uh, and we just that kind of
Because you guys aren't
rapport,
taking
I
it,
guess,
you're not
first.
taking it personally.
Right, and it's not person now, if I really wanted if I really wanted her to actually do it, and if I was serious, then I would sit her down and be like, "Hey, I'm serious, like, actually, can we do this?" Now, I'm not gonna do it at the shower door because it's a dumb thing, but if it's something else, I don't know, like being late to an event that I'm supposed to be at for school, and I need to be there on time, and she's, not ready when I want her to be ready. That's never happened, but I'm just making it up. But if that was the case, then and if we were late, I'll have to tell her like, "You cannot do this."
Yeah.
Blah 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 blah.
And
I mean, the idea is communication. When I was in marriage counseling, and I still believe this to be the case, there's really three things that kill a relationship, and it's kind of to me, I think they're all intertwining. But to me, I think it's really in this order. It's communication. Lack of communication kills a relationship. Lack of sex kills a relationship, and then lack of communication about money can kill a relationship. I think those are the three. Last time I researched it, and still alive, even from my marriage counseling, they were still true to that day. Those are the three big things that couples end with.
mhm.
Now, no, you and Susie are not really going to end by money.
I
You've
don't
told me
care.
that
I
before.
could care less about money.
So right. So the idea is, and some relationships are different, but the idea is those three things are um, very like the pillars, I think, that really put stress on the relationship or
Mhm.
the lack of it, whatever, can, don't always, but can put stress on the relationship. And so when they're pressed, they put stress on the relationship, and then you start bickering at each other as if you're opponents. When the problem is you're actually on the same freaking team.
Yeah.
And over the 6 years I've been married, I think that's the biggest, one of the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the biggest things I've learned is we're on the same team here. I can't just be complaining about her to her face. She can't be complaining about me to my face, whether it's about sex, money, communication, whatever. It's that we're on the same team. We're both trying to make it work. So how can we both try to make it work? Not me against you or you against me. It's that,
Mhm.
I want respect from you and she wants love from me.
Mhm.
And that's really what it boils down to. I think if we hold that together, then I think you can become the person that you're supposed to be, the best person that I think you're supposed to be with that spouse.
Yeah.
That goes both from the wife and for the husband,
And I think
or
that
for any
this
relationship
this
for that
like
matter.
this like phase of like conflict management and conflict resolution, if you I think honestly it doesn't have to even last that long in your relationship. It kind of depends on who you are and what your situation is. But like conflict wise, there's almost never a conflict between me and Susie. Gosh, it's been probably like
It depends on
four
what you mean by conflict, I guess,
four
right?
years without me actually like being like, damn, you messed up big time on this one. Like, or her saying that to me. Like, it probably has been about that long. Um, because you get to the point where you know, like, what to do, essentially. Um, and I feel like sometimes a lot of the conflict is wrapped up in your ego and your expectations. But after a while in the relationship, like that ego is checked at the door pretty easily, I would say. Especially if your woman like highly respects you, it's so easy to just not even care about that stuff. Um, and then you slowly just figure it out, and it's almost a non-issue. And especially when you have kids, I would almost say like the biggest reason to not have a kid is if you still have consistent conflicts, because once a child's in the mix, everything bad about your relationship gets about 10 times worse. Like maybe not that bad, but like it amplifies everything. So like when you're dating somebody and you decide to get married, marriage amplifies everything good and bad about the relationship, and it happens again once you have kids. to a even higher degree and a more stressful degree because there's a lot more going on. Now, I say all that caveated with the fact that Susie is a freaking saint. She like never complains. She handles her crap to a T. And if I ever am like, hey, like I need you to help me out here, or like I really hate when you do stuff like this, which almost never comes up, but she's always just like, not an issue. I got you. Like instantly. Um, and that's a testament to really her parents, because her mom is a problem solver. Her mom is the relationship with her mom and dad. She is, I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna bills are in order. Kids are educated. Like she homeschooled them for a long period of the time. She's like basically running the company that she works at, which they make a lot of money. And it's very like high level executive type work that she does. And she's like a manager in charge of, like, she is just on her crap constantly. And I feel like Susie is like that too, especially with homemaking. Now, granted, like Susie doesn't work, right? And she hasn't since we had Emerson. And even her job before that was like easy, like just kind of something to keep her busy. She didn't really care about it too much. So it's hard for me to relate to women who are in careers and relationships that like the woman's working all the time, the guy's working all the time. Like there's a lot more I feel like conflict management that happens there because there's a lot more intertwining responsibilities. But right now our responsibilities between me and Susie are fairly separated. So it's hard for me to have an honest conversation about the nature of most relationships, I say, in the modern day with women having careers also. So I'm just going to flat out be like, I'm not the best person to go to for stuff like that. Um, but another thing topic I wanted to get into is you said like men like to be respected, which I feel like if you're a woman hearing that, that's a cheat code. Like if you can understand that concept, you can get anybody and you can make that guy love you to death. It is not hard. It is really not that difficult. Like at least I think so. There's difficult men out there, of course, but I mean, you feed your guy, you prop him up, you encourage him, like you don't chastise him, especially openly in front of other people, like honest with him, and dude, it's make food for him. Like it's so easy. Not that you need to be like the person making food all the time, but like once in a while maybe. But you get what I'm saying. Like it's so easy. And then for a guy, you said it's our job like to provide and love. And I want to like tell you guys a quick story. So when I got married, I was still going to college full time, and I was working like almost full time. It was like 30 hours a week, and it was a lot of work. And I was hoping that, with Susie and I getting married, she'll be able to work. She'll help me take care of my school bill a little bit. I can cut down on hours. I have more time to focus on my school stuff. Like that was the plan. And it was like 3 months into our marriage where she had a seizure, which was an ongoing problem. She had epilepsy, like found out when she was a senior in high school and's been medicated for it. But she had another one and I saw it and I noticed it, and we like had to, go back to the specialist and all that. And they're like, you're going to lose your license for at least 6 months. That was the law in Nebraska at the time. I don't think it's like that anymore. But it was like, okay, my whole plan for how to make my life easier just went out the window because she couldn't work. I would have to drive her everywhere. And that wasn't feasible at the time. I was so busy that it basically like, and she had to go back through meds, which some seizure meds, at least for her, there's very negative reactions emotionally and physically. So she wasn't going to be available to work at all. So I ended up having to work full time, going to school full time. And I was working at a restaurant, like really crappy job. Long hours, like, on Saturdays it wouldn't be weird for me to go in at 9 and leave at midnight, like that same day, and have papers to write when I got home. It was miserable, right? It was not fun at all, but it was what I had to do. And um going through that, like, I remember there's one day, like I came home really long, tough, stressful, like I was just worn down. And I got in the shower after work, so I always smell like crap. And Susie got in with me, and she just like was looking at me, and she like felt so bad for everything. She's like, "Man, I feel like I'm failing, like I'm not, providing for you. I'm not supporting you that well." And I'm like, "This is all out of your hands. Like there's nothing she can do about having seizures." And it's not like, it was even a surprising thing. Like it was something that we were keeping an eye on even before we got married. I was aware of it. Um, I just remember looking at her, and I'm like, I would literally do this over and over and over again, even if it was 1,000 times worse. Like this is worth it to me, and it's easy. Like it is not difficult to do this crap when I know I have you at home. It's not hard. And I think that like really stuck with her since, like, that willingness for me to go above and beyond, like in work, to be able to have enough and provide for her. And I wasn't resenting her in the back of my head for this. Like, you know it was it was something I enjoyed doing for her. It's something I wanted to do. And I feel like as a guy, like that's the kind of mindset you have to have as like the provider, and moreover doing it out of love because you want your wife to have like a better life or a comfortable life, or like take care of her when she's sick type stuff. Like that's a joy to do, even though it's really tough. And there's guys out there with really hard jobs. I have a very easy job now, like easiest job I can possibly imagine. So it's not difficult now, but there's years of having tough warehouse job, having really physical, working outside for some of it, and I could care less. I do it all over again. It's not that difficult when I know it's going towards making her life easier, especially now with kids. That she's doing her crap at home with the kids, like she's sitting on her butt
Right.
knitting all day.
Yeah, I think that there's a difference, I think, between, and I hope the listeners, as well as, us collectively, be able to appreciate it. I think there's a difference between you and I, whereas I would do the exact same thing. I have done the exact
Oh yeah,
same
I know
thing.
you've worked some
Um,
insane hours, and
uh, Even during
yeah.
student teaching, oh, I don't wish that upon my worst enemy. When I was student teaching full time, doing lesson plans, grading, while also working close to 30 hours a week. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, it was absolutely terrible. And I think the difference is, no, I would not do that again. So, to be honest, I love Diana. I love her a lot, and I love the family, and I like providing for our family collectively. But I would want to, I think you would probably more or less agree, but I would want to try to do something different. I would not, I did it. I, if I had to, I probably would do it again, but I would honestly not choose to do that again, even though I love Diane a lot. And I think it's because I think my mentality towards working and providing has changed. I want to work smarter, not necessarily harder. I want to
Same.
get a better job if I could, and that's why, you know, I'm the department head now in my current job, to rake in a lot more financial value so I can provide for the family in the way that I couldn't if I didn't have that. So that kind of stuff. But um, when I was in college, when I was working that much, dude, you're a better man than I. No, I would not do that again.
See,
I
the
will
thing is,
not
I
absolutely.
I had to. I didn't have a
I had
choice.
to too.
It was a medical emergency. Like, what are you gonna do about that? Like, not for me. Like, no. Like there comes times as a guy, and especially after you have kids, that you have to do the shit that you hate, like you do not want to do, but you just got to do it. Like you got to handle it.
Right.
You got to be able
Anyone
to
who's
like
like,
ramp yourself up and be able to like, okay, like situation's dire, it's on you to figure out, like, mostly. Like, if that means, like, hey, girl, you gotta, like, step up, you gotta work hours, like, we gotta figure out a situation with the kids, or if there's no kids
Right.
in the home, like, I need you to start working. It could be that conversation. It's not entirely on you, but the point of what I was saying is that I didn't do it and I wasn't resentful towards Susie for it. I did it and I overall enjoyed the experience because I knew it was I was taking care of her directly and indirectly by doing all of that. And the thing that was important about my story is that was worth it to me. Like, knowing that she was being taken care of, she was getting better, health was improving, medicine settling, and all of that type of stuff. I'm like, of course I'm gonna step up and do this. And even before we were married, she had a really bad case of meningitis, and she moved to my city, and like, she didn't know anybody. I was kind of, obviously she moved there to date me, so I was, talking to her mom, like, we're going to the hospital, getting a spinal tap to test for all of this stuff, and being in the hospital, and her not being able to walk for a couple days after because of that. And I'm just like taking care of it. Like, I'm taking care of her, like, and it was no sweat off my back, and I enjoyed doing it. And I think for her mom and dad, at least, that showed like I was for real about like taking care of her and providing for her. Um, because it's just the willingness to be able to do those extra steps when necessary.
Right.
I don't think you
I
want to
don't
live a
think.
life of burning yourself, on both ends. Like, that's not fair. But there is times where you have to step up and be able to handle that. And likewise for the woman, it happens for the girl too, of course. Um, but generally speaking, um, that's on the guys to figure out for the most part. If
Yeah,
you
I
have a
don't
woman
know
supporting you, it's easy and it's
if.
enjoyable overall.
Yeah, I don't know if I would agree that it's necessarily enjoyable. Like, for instance, maybe you're just a better husband than I am. That's possible.
I don't know.
That's possible. But did I enjoy? And okay, so let me back up. First and foremost, I think because, again, listeners should know our lives well enough that Shemez and I's life pretty much parallel in a lot of different respects. We had to both work during our college, and we both got married during college, and it was very hard, and we didn't make a lot of money, and very difficult. So, and we didn't. I think Shemez had a little bit more help from Susie's family than we had
Hmm.
from ours, but similar situations. Did I think in my situation that I was happy to provide for Diana? No, I wasn't not happy. I just didn't think first thing that I thought of when I was working was, "I'm providing for her." And maybe Shemez thought that he was providing for Susie in that case because she just had a medical issue.
Yeah.
And so he felt like, I actually have to provide for her because she really can't do anything. I mean, Diane was working at, like,
Hmm.
Marshall's and doing some babysitting jobs, during college when she was graduated and I was still in college. So she was kind of raking in some good money here and there, right? So it wasn't exactly the same, I guess. But the point was, number one, that's a little bit different, and I think in our stories, and I
Different
don't think that's a bad
circumstances.
thing.
Yeah.
Number two, um, I didn't necessarily enjoy it, and I would say even now I wouldn't necessarily do it again because I didn't enjoy it. Um, and again, I hope the listeners would appreciate the differences here that, although Shemez is saying that he would enjoy it and he does enjoy it, providing for her and loving for her in that respect, and that sounds almost like a Prince Charming sort of feel.
I'm just a
I
better
don't
guy than you.
know if it
Sorry.
I mean, he just like, if he wants to think that, that's fine, and I think that's great. He's not wrong. But I don't think if you don't think that in a relationship in which it gets hard and
Yeah.
you're just trying to make it through, and if you don't think, "Oh, crap, I'm not thinking that I'm loving her and that
Yeah.
providing for her or, providing for him or whatever, I'm just providing for my spouse," if you're not thinking the exact same way Shemez was thinking when providing for Susie and why he was working, the motivations for why he's working, I don't want everyone else to think that, oh crap, I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. No.
I didn't
No.
think that, and I don't think Diana feels any less loved because of all of
Well,
all of the hard work.
that's why I appreciate um your perspective on this stuff, because I feel like you're more of the typical way people think about this stuff, and I'm more of the like, I don't know,
Almost like a
fantastical way people think about this stuff.
I was almost about to say like fantasy fantastical, which
Yeah.
is like again like Prince Charming. Like this is the grade A relationship that I think people would like to have, you and Susie's
I have
relationship,
a
and that
fairy tale relationship. I don't
they
care what other people
they
say
think
or
that
think.
maybe your relationship is like what they're going for.
Yeah.
And it's a great relationship, don't get me wrong. I don't think though that the relationship is without problems because no relationship is without problems,
Yeah.
of course. Um, but I think that there's other avenues to get to the fact that you can respect the husband and love the wife. And we both went through similar pathways. And we both, I would contend, we both have a lot of a lot of great things about our relationship. Although,
Hmm.
if I'm honest, I think though I have a lot more contentions with Diana than you probably do with Susie. But I think it's mainly because of again lack of communication because I work just way more than you do,
Yeah.
way more, and it's hard for me to shed all of that off
Yeah.
and then be able to communicate the way I need to communicate, and then also because of my own selfishness. I mean, that's really what it boils down to,
Well, and Susie and Diana are very different people too. So
right?
like Diana is, like you said, you guys are like competitive with each other to an extent, and I would say that Diana, one of the reasons I really liked her even before you guys were married, I was like, she's gonna check you, like she's gonna match your energy, and you need somebody who's gonna like whop you upside the head once in a while and keep you grounded. And Diana is definitely like that type of person. And for me, I feel like Susie is more of the encouraging, nurturing type, who's going to mainly encourage and support and like nudge in the right direction. And I feel like for me, that's the type of woman that I needed. If I had a woman that was trying to boss me around and contend with me constantly, it would not be as good, I feel like.
Right.
Um, so that's just like a difference. But I think something I'm very passionate about, and I really, really believe this, is one of the reasons why I thought like that way with Susie, like a new relationship, and then instantly all of the like responsibilities falling on my shoulders is like my mentality was like, I'm not necessarily doing this for Susie, although that was true. I was also doing it like for myself. Like I feel like for you to really love your spouse correctly, you need to love yourself correctly also. Like I really believe that. And what I mean by that is because if you have like issues that you know about yourself that you really hate about yourself, those things are going to come up and kind of you're going to project those issues on your spouse. Like you really are. Like if you find yourself, how what would be a good example of this? If you're like a perfectionist, right? And you're very hard on yourself. Um and you like talk down yourself when you fail, and like you feel shameful when you mess things up, and you take it very hard. So you're like constantly like on top of everything, like nothing falls through the cracks with you. That might be like an okay perspective to have for yourself. But once you get married, you will, in some way, shape, or form, have those same expectations of your spouse. And that's not fair. So if you're hard on yourself, you're going to be hard on your spouse. Like if you're, what would be another example of it? Let me think. Thinking something like angry. Um, find yourself getting easily frustrated. Um, quick to like shut down. Like all of these things that you're gonna notice about yourself before you get married. Like again amplified when you get married. So if I'm trying to remember, there's one circumstance where um it had to do with like shame, like feeling shame about things. I'm trying to remember what it was. Cause essentially I remember telling Susie, I'm like, this is something that like I need to figure out for myself, and if I don't, it's gonna become a problem in our relationship, like, or it's gonna keep coming up as an issue. And it had to do with shame. Like I was I don't know, like messing up something, and I felt bad about it. I'm trying to remember the circumstances, but the first thought in my head is like I need to get this right with myself. Like truly. Um I don't know what if you have any thoughts on that. I'm trying to remember what it was, but the
Um,
concept of needing to love yourself well, and that's going to make your job of loving your spouse even easier.
yeah, so I disagree. Only because I don't see any biblical reason to love yourself. And so I'm gonna be a presuppositionalist
Love your
here and
spouse as yourself.
presuppose
Love
the
others.
Bible and say
Love others as you
that
love yourself.
right. So, but that isn't. I don't think that verse is saying that you should love yourself. What it's saying is it's a maxim that you love yourself so much. So why don't you just love others the same way that you love yourself? But that doesn't, it's an asymmetry there. So I don't think that Jesus is saying a symmetrical thing with regards to you love others so much, and that's a good thing. You should also love yourself equally in the same way, because that's also a good thing. I'm saying that you, being sinful, love yourself. I mean, which is true. We naturally love ourselves. That's part of our problem is that we love ourselves. So I think what he's saying is an asymmetrical claim and saying that you love yourself so much, why don't you just take that same energy and love others as you sinfully love yourself? And so I would take an asymmetrical claim with that verse, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think that anything that you said is necessarily wrong, except for the fact that I think the motivation, I would change the motivation a bit. So, for instance, um, like forgiving yourself. I don't see any biblical reason to, to this idea of forgiving yourself. I understand the sentiment, and I understand the sentiment of loving yourself. It's understanding who you are, dealing with your shame, dealing with your guilt, and actively seeking Christ's forgiveness and grace and mercy. Let him shed that off yourself so that you don't bring that baggage into your relationships with your kid, your spouse, coworkers, whatever. I get that, but then I'd rather just say that. I'd rather just say that God has forgiven me, he has given me grace, so I don't need to be, let's just say, a perfectionist towards my wife,
Yeah.
towards my spouse in the way that I would necessarily for myself, because grace requires nothing of me
Mm-hmm.
generally. Christ already did all the work, so I don't need to earn anything. So my spouse also doesn't need to feel like they don't need to earn anything from me. I don't need to be critical in the same way I'm critical of myself. But that's just one little small. I don't think anything that you said after that would disagree with what I say. It's just I think the motivation is a bit
No, and
different.
I think we're saying the same thing because that's kind of what I meant. I
Right.
just didn't know how to say it. Because really, if you think about it, if you personally feel like a constant failure, if you're like, man, I keep messing up, or like I'm not the type of person that should be in a relationship. Like I have all these anger issues, I have guilt issues, I have a lot of regret that I haven't dealt with in my life. I mean, we have tools as Christians to deal with that, and there's tools outside of Christianity to deal with that also. But if you don't take care of that stuff within yourself, like it is gonna rear its ugly head in your relationship. And even worse, and way more dire, and way more damaging, is you're
Your
going to
kids.
take those out on your kids too. Yeah. And
Right.
and the concept of like obviously your kids are physically, biologically speaking, like you also. And the Bible teaches once you get married you become one flesh. And I just think that how you relate to yourself, like in your own headspace and world, is projecting on your kids and your spouse also. So part of
Yeah,
that
it's true.
is you got to be a decent guy to start. Like
Right.
I really believe that. Um, and if you have issues where you're beating yourself up or you're feeling convictions about what you're doing and you're not handling those and you're not taking care of them, it's going to, like I said, rear its ugly head. So it's
Right.
a big part because I had a lot when I first got married with Susie. I had a lot of shame. I think was like a big like um thing that kept coming up of like I just didn't feel worthy of her in a sense. Um, I didn't feel like like I don't deserve this life I have, and I really have a problem with that still. Um, like with my upbringing, with everything that happened with my brother, um, just what I've been told by other people, like people like me don't have relationships like that, and I felt like guilty and like I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of this. I'm not like there's nothing I did to deserve this type of stuff. And it wasn't like a grateful sentiment. It was like I felt shameful over it. And then I don't remember the circumstances of what happened, but I remember like realizing that in my head and being like, I cannot think this because I'm just gonna constantly like basically like tear myself down. Um and if I believe I'm not worthy of my relationship and I'm not like enjoying it, I'm not seeing it as like a gift, then I'm going to eventually become a person who actually isn't worthy of that relationship. Like it's a self fulfilling prophecy in a sense that I'm just gonna like, you know, if I think that, I'm gonna start acting it, and if I act that, it's gonna become true in a
Hmm.
sense. And in like the grand scheme, like 15 years out type of stuff. Um and yeah, when you have kids and you're feeling like if you're a vengeful person or a spiteful person or someone quick to anger, God, you're gonna see that so clearly when you have children. Holy crap! Like it's going to come up all the time, and I mean, I feel like everyone listening would be able to relate to that in a sense of their parents being um like that in some ways. At least I can think back to those times. So I think I don't know part like loving yourself is not constantly being okay with everything you do. It's getting yourself to a place where you're not constantly feeling shitty about what you do. Like because you're not doing shitty things is essentially what I'm getting at. So you can like exist conviction free most of the time.
I would do one change. We always do things that we disagree with. That's not going to change.
That's not going to change.
But the mentality with what you do after you do something that you disagree with, that you don't like, instead of saying, being shameful about it or feeling guilty, saying to yourself, instead of saying, hey, I am something that's terrible, um,
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah.
And of course, it's easier said than done. I think everyone deals with shame, but you're right. I think in relationships, so much more prevalent, and it's the stakes are higher when you have kids.
Yeah.
You have three, I have one, so you know more than I do, but the stakes are still higher when you have kids. The things you say around them, the things you say about them, the things you say around them,
Hmm.
like just not even
It's not
not
even what you
even
say, it's
to
how you
them.
act too.
Right, not even to them. It could be with like not even to your spouse, just someone else. I mean, uh, in my teacher program, this is my one of my professors said this, and it was relating to classroom management, and I think it's perfect when it relates to kids as well. But things in with kids, with teenagers, in his context was uh, those things are caught, not taught, with teenagers. They just catch you doing something, and then they start observing it, and then they think that we're going to go with it. But I think it's worse with toddlers
And
because toddlers literally observe freaking everything that you
they
do.
absorb everything.
Uh, right.
Insane in that
And
respect.
just the way I actually remember a couple months back, I was really loose with my tongue. Um, I won't say what I said, but I was really loose with my tongue about Millie, my daughter, and I wasn't necessarily talking to her. I was just talking out loud, um, to to my wife Diana, and she got really upset about what I said, and I didn't really quite understand. But then, and I needed to literally beg her almost, and this is the communication part, to just because she just expected me to know what the problem was, but I didn't, and so I had to literally like, beg her, like, tell me, like, I'm dumb. Just assume I'm stupid, and I don't know what you're talking about. Why it was so terrible with what I said to Millie or about Millie or whatever. She told me, and then I could understand why it was so terrible, and so I had to apologize, not just to Diana, but also oddly enough to my daughter, even though she's like a year old. But this idea of getting into this habit of acting
Accountability.
around your kids a
Yeah.
certain way because you don't want your own failures to project onto them.
Yeah.
You want them to be them,
Yeah.
even though they're biologically from you. But you want them to be them and you want to support them to be themselves. But they can't do that with all your other projected baggage,
Exactly.
even if it's loose baggage that you're just kind of joking about it
Yeah.
is thrown onto them implicitly or explicitly. They just can't be themselves.
Yeah.
And so knowing what you've said or what you do around them can affect it. The same goes for the spouse, of course.
Hmm.
So we have more experience, both of us would have more experience, I think, with being a spouse than being um, a, a father necessarily. But
Yeah. And I don't know. I think it's an interesting concept that's not really talked a lot enough in at least Christian circles is having like mental health and um or I guess say having like a robust relationship in your own inner like interpersonal dialogue and how you think about yourself and like how you conceptualize yourself in relationship to other people. Like
right,
you need to believe that you're a positive overall. Like cuz if you're just like oh, I'm a sack of crap, like oh I'm constantly messing up. I'm always angry, like I'm always failing. I'm always like all of those types of things you got to get that cleaned up. Um
yeah,
if
I
you want
think
to have
that's
a
the
good
purpose of the
relationship.
gospel, though.
Yeah, and I would say the gospel gives us tools to deal with that. And it's very clear and direct where to go and how to deal with it given faith. It's one of the great things I like about it. That's why I would say it's not even a bad idea to build a society that is grounded in biblical truth. It helps the community overall. I really believe that, but of course that can be abused just like
Yeah,
anything
right.
can. But the concept I really love when the Bible talks about marriage because the concept of like becoming one flesh, like when you talk about physicalness, like when you get married, your wife owns your body and you own your wife's body. I think that's a
Yeah.
super
So
helpful way to
let's
think
just.
about those things.
I agree, but obviously, a lot of our listeners are gonna be like, "What?"
Yeah,
And the idea is this is definitely a biblical truth, but it's not a cultural truth.
yeah,
So don't, if you're a listener here, don't impose your own culture that basically says you're the one who owns your body.
yeah,
You can do whatever you want with your body, which in a sense, I guess it's true. But in another sense, when you're married, you give up your rights.
yes.
What the Bible calls them is your conjugal rights. So your right to your body is not your own. You are now shared, one with another human being.
Hmm.
And so,
And I think this comes into play when you talk about or think about cheating. Honestly, or like
Right.
how you um relate to people like sexually speaking after marriage. It's like if I was hit on by a girl or whatever, literally my first thought is like, this is not mine to like flaunt around and like give to somebody else or even like show off to anybody. Like it's literally not my body. Like I cannot like, or even I don't want to like be out
Right.
there for other women. Like and I've had like coworkers and other eyes on me since I've been married. And it's always like it's in 1,000% like a non-issue because it's like I don't even think about it in a sense of like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. It's like it's not even mine to even consider in the first place. Like, and I feel like that's so helpful to think about it in those terms once you get married. I if you really believe that, it's just gonna make your life so much easier. When you're dealing with like how to be faithful in your relationship. And the flip side for a girl, like your guy owns your body, and I'm not saying like, you know, people want to talk about like abortions or like they need to stay physically fit for me or they need to look a certain way for me. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like in a sexual way, like you don't have the right to be giving yourself away to other people because it's not yours to give away anymore. Does that make sense? Like,
Right. But again, I'm going to just throw in one wrench. It is controversial, although, and this is going to get really sticky, so I'm going to try to choose my words extremely carefully. uh, in a sense, yes, with regards to cheating and adultery and infidelity, it's pretty obvious that your body is not your own, so it's not yours to begin with. So, yada yada. In another sense, if the conjugal right, in a more positive sense, that's more like a negative sense. In a
yeah,
positive sense, your body isn't your own. So, positively, it does belong to your spouse. And I'm not going to use husband, wife. I'm going to use spouse just in general. It's to both. So what that means is, yes, I am a firm believer, and this is controversial, so you can tell me I am
an
totally
idiot.
wrong if you want to. But I think that if we take a strong interpretation on that verse in 1 Corinthians 7, at least with regards to sexual matters, that yes, since you share now one unit, uh, if you don't like, I'm going to use something super pedantic, but if you don't like how the other person's necessarily dressing, because it's not their body, and now you're sharing with one body, I believe biblically through the spousal relationship, you have a right to say, I don't like the way you're dressing. I
Yeah.
want you to change.
No, I agree with you on that.
Um, or or if you don't like that they're too skinny or too heavy, I think through healthy biblical communication that it is totally okay, not sinful, not morally objectionable to say, I don't like this. We, and I'm saying we, not spouse, we need to talk about this and change something. Why
Hmm.
am I saying we? Because it's their body. It's the spousal bodies. Like both of the spouses, they share a shared unit. They become one flesh. So I think you shouldn't say, "Hey, you need to lose weight" or something like that. Because then what it does psychologically is it pins the other person against them, and you're treating it unbiblically because you're saying that they have their own body and they're responsible for their body. I'm responsible for mine. You got to take care of your body. But it's not their body. It's the spousal's body. It's
Yeah.
within the spousal unit. So we have to do something. It's like, for instance, Dinah, something super again pedantic, um, kind of silly, and I already told my students about this. But she was just kind of like looked at me a couple months ago, and she was like, "I don't like this. What you got going on? The way you dress, the way you do your hair. Not about this. Something needs to change." I'm like, okay. What do you want to do? It's like, you need to change the way you do your hair. So I sort of did. It's roughly the same, but it's a little bit different. But did I like, how dare you, woman?
No.
No,
Yeah.
because it's her body. She has to
Yeah.
look at it. Like, she has to look at it,
Exactly.
so she has to literally, in some sense, actually be attracted to it. And so, it's our body to mutually enjoy. So she has to be able to enjoy it. If she's not enjoying something about that body, then I think biblically it's within her right to say that, "Hey, I'm not enjoying this."
Yeah.
Part of the reason why I grew the mustache. And so right now I'm taking a hiatus, and now I'm gonna grow it back
Does she like the
because
stash? Is that what she's into?
she loves the stash.
What about the soul
She loves
patch
it.
right there? What about that?
Right. So she loves it, and some of the students don't like it for some obvious reasons, but students are just students. But then I'm like, I don't mind it. It's okay. I don't really like that much, but she's still like, hey, it's your mustache. But it's like, is it really? Like, I'm using silly examples to point out something that I think biblically it should be obvious,
Yeah.
that we share something together, and we should be able to say to the other spouse through healthy communication, not coercive communication, that, hey, I don't like this, or I do like this, blah 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 blah. And I
Yeah.
think that's what makes good, I don't know,
It makes things go smoother, I think. And I
right.
think that at least in terms of like how your girl dresses, I think that that's also like a matter of like respect also. And some girls are here that's like, I'm like, I can wear what I want and I'm gonna dress how I want. It's like, yeah, you can, but once you get married, like it's going to be a little bit different. Maybe, possibly, like it could.
Right.
But like, for example, I've really never had a problem with what Susie's wore. Um, and she'll ask my input constantly on like what to wear. But I mean, she'll wear leggings out and like stuff where I'm like, babe, you look like hot. I'm just letting you know you're gonna get looks. Like, and if you're fine with that, I don't care. I'm just letting you know it's gonna happen. And she'll just like be like, you know what? Yeah, I don't really feel like dealing with that right now. Let me go throw some sweatpants on or something like that. Or like sometimes like, well, I'm in a rush. I don't really care. Like whatever. Like personally for me, like it doesn't bother me one way or another, really how she dresses. Cause I don't really necessarily feel like disrespected by it if she's wearing something promiscuous or whatever. But I know some guys would, but then I'd question, why are you feeling like that? Like, are you insecure about your relationship with her? Like, why are you even worried? Like, yeah, she might get some looks or whatever, but of course, you should trust her that she's not going to act on it. Like, it doesn't matter ultimately. Like, the motivation for wanting to
I
change
think
the
it's
way
going to be
your spouse
her.
dresses needs to be from a better place than like jealousy or like insecurity and stuff like that. But it can happen, of course. Like it's fine to do stuff like that. I have one spouse relationship that I know about where like the guy just grew up very conservative and he's like a woman like in public shouldn't wear jeans. And that's just like he's raised like that. So whatever. And it's super annoying for the woman obviously like she's like what the frick like this is ridiculous. But for the most part, like she keeps up with it and has changed, and it's just makes their relationship easier. And I think as the years have gone on, he doesn't really care about that anymore. She can wear jeans out or whatever. But at
That's
the start,
crazy.
yeah, at the start, it's like it's a point of respect for him, and that goes back to like how can you as a woman respect your husband, and that was something that he grew up with and he was used to and he expected. No, those were his motivations for it, which isn't bad. And those types of things change obviously as you get further in your relationships. Those convictions aren't going to last because you're in a culturally different place, I think. But at the start, it
Right.
was something that she kind of caved on as a way of showing him respect, even though it was a little ridiculous and she didn't agree. So I mean, me personally, I almost never say anything about what a woman wears. Like I want my I want Susie to look hot. Like I want not like people looking at her, but I want her to feel good about how she looks. And I want her to be like feel confident and feel cute. And, like I'm fine with it. Like I could care less. And when it comes like talking about keeping yourself physically attracted to your spouse, there's always the caveat of health issues. Childbirth comes up. Like there's all sorts of variables that go into it. But overall, the sentiment should be I want to look good for my woman. And likewise, the woman, I want to look good for my man. And
Right.
that's like a goal. And it's like not even, it shouldn't be a point of stress. It should be something that like you would enjoy doing
Should
because it enhances
yeah.
your relationship. It makes it
I
just
think
better.
if I may, and hope she doesn't get upset, but I think Dinah is she's one of the only ones I think. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'll scratch that, but I know her mom doesn't really wear makeup, and her motivations are different, and because she thinks it's partly vain and worldly and stuff. So on special occasions, her mom will wear makeup and stuff. And one of her sisters actually thinks very, very similarly. And and then I asked her, so why do you wear makeup? Because generally, I mean, I care, but I don't care. I don't really notice it. Like there's been months where she's hasn't worn any makeup, and then months where she's always worn makeup. But I asked her like, why do you care? She said essentially what you said. It's just I just like being I like feeling cute. I like feeling confident and
Hmm.
stuff. Does she need the makeup to do that? No, I don't think she does. I think it helps for her. I don't know why, because I think she's pretty regardless, but um, just for her, it helps. And I think you're right. I think I don't really have an issue with what Diana wears, like really at all.
Yeah.
I just want her to feel confident enough to wear whatever and have the right motivations to wear
Yeah.
it. So while her mom thinks that when you wear makeup, you're just trying to be worldly, not necessarily.
Not at all, actually.
And her mom's very traditional, obviously. And Diana just thinks that's false, that's hogwash, that you can still wear makeup and not feel vain or worldly or anything like that. And I agree. Same thing with the guy. I mean, the guy can wear makeup, I guess. It's kind of weird, but in my opinion. But hey, or the way he dresses, right?
Yeah.
He wants to wear bling or fancy shoes just to feel confident. I think the same goes for that. But putting it back into the spousal relationship, the spouse has to generally agree. Like if I was wearing something like, some douchey shoes that were totally out of character per se, just to be cool, I think Diana has the right, and she has not with shoes, but with other things, has the right to say, I don't like that. You got to get rid of it. I don't think that fits with your character.
Yeah.
And I think there's some things that she has worn before that doesn't necessarily fit with her character, although she just has to put like a cardigan on it and then it fits perfectly. But just you get the point. Like
Yeah.
I think that that makes a good, healthy spouse relationship when it comes to modesty.
Yeah. And like again, I might not be the best person to even talk about this stuff because I could care less. As long as you're not wearing a thong, you're not your butt cheeks aren't hanging out. Like I'm chilling. So I don't really have high
Although,
expectations with that stuff at all.
to be completely honest, I do know this is maybe a little bit off topic. I do know, and I have talked to Diana about it, about a friend, a mutual friend, who they claim to be Christian, and yet like wife is very I don't even know what the word is. Let's just say the
Showy.
wife wears very eccentric clothing,
Okay.
especially in the beach, where her butt cheeks are straight up hanging out. Not always, but she does have some suits that are like that, and she does wear other promiscuous, I think, clothing. At least to my taste and to my upbringing, to my conservativeness, would be considered promiscuous. And I talked to Diane about it, and she actually really remember what she said, but I think she relatively disagreed that it's not necessarily immodest. That's an interesting conversation. Where do you draw the line between modesty and immodesty? That's hard. I honestly don't think Christians have ever really nailed it down, to be
No,
completely honest.
it's always changing. That the lines are shifting all the time,
Right.
mostly moving in the direction of the less you wear, it's more and more okay. Um, but for me, I think it really boils down to motivation more than like what you're actually wearing. For example, like if that guy was to sit down with his woman and be like, "Why the heck are you doing that?" And she's like, "Well, I want to feel cute. I want to, have fun. Like I just have these suits. Like I want to use them. Blah blah blah." And if he was like, "Well, I have a problem with them. I just don't like.
Right.
I don't like
And
how
I
you
get
look
that.
out there." Then if those are
And
truly her motivations, it should be easy to be like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know." Like easy to change. Like because you can wear something else and still feel cute. It doesn't have to be a freaking thong to the beach, necessarily. And I feel like that should be like a really easy conversation. So at least for me, like as a guy, I know what draws my attention and what is like, whoa, like that's a lot. I wouldn't want my wife like wearing that out to the beach because I feel like in a way that could be seen as like disrespectful to you as her husband. Like dude, what is your girl doing out at the beach with all of her stuff hanging out? Like what is that? Like
perhaps
other
the
people are
husband
going to think
care,
that.
though.
And if the guy doesn't care, I have a hard time saying that the woman is in the wrong. Like I okay, cool. Like that's not my cup of tea. I know for Susie, she wouldn't want to dress like that. And would I be comfortable at the beach if she did? I'd be like, babe, you are literally gonna get eye raped the entire time. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like I don't feel like babysitting you against all these other guys and all this other attention you're gonna get. Like, it's not worth it. Like,
Perhaps perhaps she doesn't necessarily feel the need to be babysat. So what if you have a spouse in this hypothetical scenario that does like to wear promiscuous clothing like that towards the beach, grocery shopping, to freaking Target, who cares? Just whatever. And because she wants to feel cute, so the motivation's there. The husband doesn't necessarily care too much. Is it still in a Christian uh, worldview? Would it still be considered immodest? That's the issue. So like I think, and I don't even know. I can't even say yes or no.
yeah, I would
Because
still
in one
say,
sense I want to say yes, but in another sense I'm like, well, no,
okay, well,
because
at the beach is one thing, right? I could I could forego like, okay, in that setting, sure, but if you're walking around Target in a thong, yes, that's just on societal norms. That's very strange. Like, and so
I don't really care necessarily about societal norms. I'm
but
mainly
that
caring about like
I think that
biblical.
modesty has a lot to do with what's considered modest in the culture. Like those
True.
pieces, like those go hand in hand. There's not like a expectation of modesty for Christians, and then the expectations for your society is entirely different. Like there's people.
But I think it is.
I don't necessarily think so. I think to an extent maybe there's obviously some differences. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah, I don't really know though because there's places in the world where it's not that weird for a woman to not have a shirt on. Like,
Right.
and that's like
Through that
completely,
culture.
yeah, that's completely fine through their culture. So to say like if they were Christians or whatever, would they need to go start dressing differently? I would say no. I wouldn't, you know, if
I think I would have to disagree.
I don't know.
That I would disagree. I would take a hard stance on that. I just don't know what that threshold of modesty is, where it becomes from culture to Christian and Christian to culture. I
Yeah.
do think that the Christianity is, Christians are supposed to live in the world, but I'm a really big believer that they're not of the world, and they should be different in some way with how they speak, dress, act, and so forth. Uh, and how they do that is where it gets extremely difficult, right?
Yeah.
To try to measure that stuff out. But I will say they have to be different. And so if you're a Christian in some parts of the world where you can just go topless, I would have to draw a line and say, especially if you're married, perhaps, that that is no longer like your body would then no longer be sacred for your husband, or for your spouse, even if it
I
was a guy just butt naked,
I
just
feel like
flapping around.
I feel like
It could be the other way.
you need to feel convicted about that in the first place. Like,
Sure,
and I feel
you
like
need to
that's
feel
the
convicted about
biggest
it.
point of contention is like what, like for example, if you feel convicted about the way your wife is dressing, you need to have a conversation about that to where you're like, man, I just don't think this is right. Like you're getting way too much attention all the time.
It's too
Like,
subjective, Bob. Like,
but in the realm of a relationship, that I feel like that's okay. But in the realm of overall like society and how Christians, I it because I mean like ankles, bro. Like this line has been moving
right.
forever. Like where does it stop? Like,
But yeah, and that's why I'm saying I don't know where
all
the
right, keep
threshold
talking,
is,
keep talking. I'll be right back.
but I don't know where the threshold is. But that I don't think necessarily negates the threshold. So what Shemez was trying to say is I totally get like 100, 200 years ago, women couldn't even 300 years ago, women couldn't even like show their necks. They couldn't even show their wrists in some sense, or their ankles, or their knees, or whatever. And I get that. That's so anyone who's listening, I'm not necessarily saying that that's what we should convert to. What I'm saying is I think that there is a threshold that exists, but just because I don't know where that threshold is, that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't exist. So, for instance, the classic trope, the absence of evidence does not equal the evidence of absence. So, when I'm saying the threshold with the angles, maybe they're culturally back 300, 400 some years ago. That's true. There's still threshold of modesty there. Now, advance and fast forward 400 years into the future where we are now. Um, does that modesty factor still play? Um, no, not with that line. But again, is there a line still? And I think, yes, there should still be a line that transcends culture, time, and so forth. What is that line? No idea.
Yeah, I don't. I have
But
no idea.
I still think there is a line, regardless of whether you're married or not. And I think Christians have notoriously struggled at trying to find that line.
Yeah,
And so I was telling my wife the other day, she's a big proponent on immodest only if the motivation's wrong. Essentially, kind of what you were saying. And so, but part of that reason is because of her being backlash through her upbringing, so much so that you couldn't even eat. She just told me the story the other day. She actually got ridiculed, I think it was her or a friend, in her Christian college of eating a banana whole because it may cause men to stumble. So she needs to eat a banana with a fork.
that's a horny culture they're living in. So horny.
In my Christian college, not when I was there, but I heard rumors like decades before I was there, women couldn't even, and men, but the students couldn't even leave. It's specifically directed towards women, which I thought was misogynistic. But women couldn't leave their dorm with their hair wet. because then men would have thoughts saying, "Oh, you shower?" And then their mind would go, and I'm like, "Wow, who would have thought women shower?"
Whoa.
But it that's the idea. This line is somewhere, and
Yeah.
how Christians throughout the centuries have tried to point at it, of this is modest and this is immodest, have faltered over and over and over again. And maybe that's why Paul left it so, you know, vague and oblique in his letters to Timothy. But at the same time, I feel like there has to be a threshold somewhere. And just because we don't necessarily know what it is or where it is doesn't necessarily mean that it
Yeah.
doesn't exist.
Yeah, I don't think that there's like an actual like set line necessarily in the Bible per se. But I think there's only so much clothing, like so much styles of clothing. Like I think it's pretty well like in my mind settled as to like what's considered appropriate now. Like for guys, you cover your junk, you cover your butt. In 99% of the time, you cover your chest. Like wear shorts and a
Oh, I can wear a
t-shirt.
Speedo though, right?
No, because that you can
I'm
literally,
covering everything.
unless you have like a micro penis, you can still see the outline of the crotch ish
Okay, so
area.
then
A ball could
then
come
okay, so
out.
we have another condition that's not just your junk showing, it's not just your cheeks are showing, but the outline of it. Then
Yeah,
women can't wear tight clothing then, right?
I'm talking
Because
about.
then
Okay,
we can see the outline of their breasts.
you can easily say that. Yeah,
Right,
that
so then it gets do you see what I'm saying? It gets really hard,
it doesn't
really
though.
sticky.
It's not that hard. If you really want to get into the weeds of it, you can argue this all day. You could pull a Drew and come up with all sorts of critiques to this argument. But I'm just saying,
But that's not so
generally
good.
speaking, there is like an accepted cultural standard
There
that
is an accepted cultural
and I
standard.
think maybe like the only
Yeah,
thing that I would probably like that society accepts that I'm just like, bruh, do we have to do this? Is leggings like literally? You want to talk about seeing
sounds too
outlines
easy.
of stuff? Like I see your whole butt, every crevice of it, like in some of these clothing, and just, people will just
You would
wear
see the
that to
same
school.
thing, with a bathing suit.
Yeah, but that's a different. You're in a different context there.
Dog. No, I don't think there's any different I don't think there's a different context, like,
Okay.
honestly.
Well, I'm just saying like the cultural standards for like for women's clothing, at least the bottom half is like I mean, you might as well be naked
There
at this point with some of the stuff people are wearing. So I'm just like I just
but
don't unless you're like advertising like man, like why would
that's
you.
the thing, like, even when you have a bikini on, yes, there's different sizes of bikinis too, but or, again, back with men with Speedos. They're covering everything. You can see the outline, but the women are the exact same. You can absolutely see the side of their breasts depending on the size of the, bikini.
So what
So,
should they wear
is it just
shirts?
misogynistic and we're picking on men and not women? I feel like it doesn't
Just the
matter because they're still human
I feel
beings.
like the nature of the like part is like somewhat different, you know. So to me, the intimate part of a breast would be like seeing like the nipple. Like
Dude, no, no.
I'm
And
just
that
saying
means they can just
society
wear
standards.
tassels.
Yeah.
They
But
can wear tassels and be perfectly fine.
but
But
the
clearly, intuitively, we wanna say that's not good. That's not
I
okay.
mean legally
So it's
speaking that would even be
oh my
considered
gosh.
like
I'm not
uh what is it called? That would be considered in public indecency. Even the
I
tassels
don't
cuz
care
they
about legally
move.
speaking, dog.
I'm just saying that like you would be like, "Oh, but they could do this and this." And like legally speaking, they can't do that. So like obviously morally speaking.
Right, right. So, but legally speaking, the legality of it is gonna change with the culture, right? So, it's even seen with different countries, right? So, the legality will change with the cultural trends, and the cultural trends dictate, in a sense, the legality of it and the okayness of it. What I'm saying is, I think there's a hard biblical stance, a Christian stance, where it needs to be drawn. I have no idea where that is, but intuitively, I think, at least with Christians, that we can say that some things are not okay and some things are not. And we can't just say outlines of stuff because very obviously, even Christian girls wear just a shirt. It could even be a Faith Baptist Bible College shirt, but just a wee bit too tight, and it shows the outline of their chest. And is that wrong?
No,
I think intuitively we want to say no, right? We
it's
want to
not.
say no, but then okay, everything's covered. So then a man with a speedo, then we want to say, well, maybe, but I'm questioning the intuitions of it. Why do we have these intuitions? Um, at least in American
Okay.
Christian
Okay,
culture.
think about it this way. What are the differences between a penis and a breast? Just really
So
like
they're both reproductive,
don't
but
shut up. All
yeah.
right, the difference between a penis and a breast is a penis, the size changes, Colton. Maybe yours doesn't, but most people's size changes depending on how they're feeling at the time.
Right.
And if you're wearing a Speedo, it could be very obvious when that change
Why does that
happens
matter? Why does
because
change matter?
a boob is not going to change size just randomly. It's not going to
Right.
be like an alert to like, "Oh, this woman is now aroused." I mean,
But the
if
nipple
she
could.
yes, that's why I would say you need to be wearing a bra like, and I think on a societal standard, most people be like, "Yeah, wear a bra when you go out. Don't just have your titties out and about jiggling around." Like most, I feel like I'm pretty comfortable in saying that that's a societal norm is to have a bra on, and the reason for that
But
is
it's
partly
changing.
that reason. But that's why speedos aren't generally accepted, is because you like it's not going. It could be based on your size, not going to be covered.
Right.
So I feel like that's a hard line, pun intended, that I feel like we can all agree on. Like, Speedos are generally speaking not a good thing to wear. But I really feel
So
like
it's not about the outline. It's about what the reproductive organ does, right?
no, it's about the outline.
Dog.
Okay, because the outline is going to become very, very, very obvious if a guy is
Let's just
aroused, is what I'm
take
saying.
a 20-year-old college student who's wearing a Faith Baptist Bible College t-shirt she just won, and she wears it the very next day, and she's pretty busty, let's just say. She wears it. You can see an outline very obviously
Of
because she
course.
has, let's just say, big breasts.
Of
So what
course.
I'm saying is, if it matters with the outline, how is it then the fact that she's being not immodest? You want to say that she's not immodest, but then you say that the outline does matter. And then if you want to be consistent, then you have to say with that female, she is being immodest in some sense
No.
because she's projecting a certain outline of a reproductive organ.
What have I been saying this whole
Right?
time? The intimate part would be the nipple. So to me, the outline, that's all I'm
But
talking about. That is
the
all I'm talking about.
counterexample that I've given is obvious. If I just cover the nipple, we intuitively want to say that no, that yes, it's like you see the whole breast, you just cover the nipple, but of course you're still being immodest. So that same girl cannot just show up to Baptist Bible College class just wearing tassels. Tassels, one that say Faith Baptist Bible College.
Come on, bro.
We would still say, "Girl, uh, what are you doing?" Right? So I don't think your intuition is
But
correct here,
but
and this is
everything
what
is
drives me so insane.
like the breast is overall covered, right? So you're not
Right.
seeing skin.
Well, the nipple in this case is just covered with the
No.
Faith Baptist Bible College tassel.
See, you're talking
Right?
about like what makes it immodest is like the outline of it. I'm like, I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no. I told you very clearly I don't know the stance.
I
I'm
know, I
just
know, but
thinking out
we're
loud.
in this instance, it would be like the outline of it. My counterpoint would be like, Colin, what should busty women wear to
I know,
hide
that's what's
the
so
fact?
hard.
Should they just be have boxes like? But then the size of the box will tell you if they have
Right.
big boobs or not. So like, I'm like, so to me,
Do you
I feel like this is
remember,
a very obvious answer, a very
right, do you
obvious
remember
answer.
when we were in Whispering Cedars Baptist camp and they made like the females like wear shirts and stuff? They
Yeah,
didn't do that our last couple years, I don't think, but our first couple years, I think I think, yeah, they made the females wear shirts, even if they had a one piece on.
yeah,
And it was like, are you kidding me? Are you joking? Even then, it's like, wow, really? Um, but I understand their sentiment. And so with, big, uh, big breasts, if someone has a big breast size, no fault to their own, right? They just have the genetics like that. Or likewise, if a man is generally large, no fault to their own, even if it's flaccid, we don't want to fault them for it. But at the same time, are they just going to be perpetually immodest? And of course, we both want to say, no, that's ridiculous, right? So that's why the line, the threshold there, even though we don't know where it is, it's kind of hard to find. Um, that's why I think a lot of people, like my wife and perhaps you, want to say it has a lot to do with intentions and motivations. Like the man with the fairly endowed penis, is he being immodest because he is wearing just boxers, or for instance, but um, now he has to cover up and has to wear something a little bit more like corduroy pants or something,
oh,
or jeans, like 2 layers of jeans in order, like, who knows, like maybe it depends on each person because that is the cross, if they're a Christian, that they have to carry.
yeah,
Maybe, I don't know. So that the girl with the big breast, for instance, the woman with the big breast, do they do they have to carry a box around them?
yeah.
Uh,
No, they
this
don't.
is the cross I have to carry.
No,
Like, no, but I think we're hitting at something that's very interesting.
I
It's always been on my mind, I
it's
think,
one of
but
those things that I would consider not all things are lawful, but not all things are helpful, right? And
right.
I think modesty easily falls in this box, and I think it has a lot to do with conviction. It has a lot to do with the culture you find yourself in, whether that be a conservative Christian culture or a very liberal culture. You can fit in there easily, wearing essentially what they wear to an extent. Because there's also like you do want to be separated to in some ways to the culture you're around, but you also want to be part of that culture. And if the way you dress is going to like make you like an outsider or an outcast, like right away, then it's gonna be hard for people to relate to you and come to you and want to be friends with you. You know, if everyone's like wearing like you're a big breasted woman and you feel like convicted by God, you need to wear a box. It's
Mhm.
gonna be real hard for people to take you seriously when it comes to your opinions on modesty. So like obviously you're a weirdo for this. Um, but yeah, I don't know if she's convicted about it. I'd question it a lot because you're gonna get way more attention wearing a box than you would be just wearing a normal shirt. But I
Right.
don't know. It's interesting, but God, I could care less honestly. When it comes to that stuff, like I would even say like if, for example, if like one of my if someone at church was like, hey man, like I just want to tell you I the way your wife dresses is very distracting. Like, and if they were like, it's not only me, like I've heard it from a few people. Like, could you talk to her about that? Um, I feel like I would like obviously let Susie know, but my first intention wouldn't be like you need to change it. I really take a hard look at it and think about it and make changes if I feel like they'd be helpful. But could also be like, I guess this isn't the church for us. If these guys are so horny that they can't be around a
Or
woman who's
perhaps she
wearing,
is being modest compared to what you would consider modest, and they're still like,
yeah.
you know,
Because there's a point
which
where
is
I'm like, that's a you problem, my guy.
right,
Like
because I
my,
think on it, if you want to find something to lust after,
you'll find it
doesn't matter
anywhere.
what you wear, right? You'll find something to lust after, right?
Exactly. So that's why it's very tricky because it's not a solo issue. It kind of
Right,
depends on the perception of other people, which in terms of relationship, what's most important is being modest in the eyes of your spouse. And I think
right.
that was like the general point we're getting on. Long tangent, interesting conversation. Um, but I think the other point I wanted to bring up that is very important, at least in my relationship, is no secrets about anything. Complete honesty. And what that looks like
Even
is
with Christmas gifts?
what?
Even with Christmas gifts?
Yes, especially Christmas gifts. But I think
I
that
get what you're
there,
saying.
at least like the first couple of years I was married, there wasn't things I was hiding per se. There just wasn't things I brought up necessarily, or like, this is my issue that I'm dealing with. Like, she doesn't need to be in on my like problems. And a lot of that, like, some of it was sexual, but most of it was like me struggling with like just happiness in general, or just being okay with the ideas that good things are happening to me, and that's like it's not going to blow up in my face instantly. I had a really, really hard time with that, but it was like a burden that I carried on my own for a few months, maybe even a year into our relationship, till I finally started opening up to her about that and just admitting that the way my mind works is really jacked up, is very abnormal and kind of unhealthy. Like every time that she's out in the car with the kids, I always think about the fact that they could all die in a car accident and what I would do every time, every single time. And that was something I didn't tell her for a long time. I'm like, that's weird. Like, that's not, I don't want to share that burden with her necessarily. Like, that's not a helpful thing or a positive thing or something that I even really wanted to admit to her. Um, but I feel like eventually I felt convicted about it, to the fact that if I'm like struggling with something, like I want her to be aware of it. Um, I want her to know like my biggest issues, what I'm worried about, what I fear, um, like what I'm struggling with essentially. Like the man and wife relationship is the only relationship truly that you can have where there is no limit on the amount of honesty you can have. Like nothing is off limits when talking with your wife, and that should be the case. Um, so you should never think like, oh man, like I'm dealing with this thing, but I just know my wife like wouldn't have anything to say about it. Like, oh, like I need to take care of this on my own. Like I don't want to bother her with these things. Like, I'm talking about real, you know, problems that come up over and over again. Not like, you busted the tire on the car and you're just like gonna go fix it because like why bother my wife? I'm just gonna go take care of it. I'm not talking about that. I feel like that's obvious, but um, I feel like there's a not explicitly doing it, but there's most people or a lot of relationships do have parts of it that aren't uncovered um willingly, if you will. So
Mhm.
spouses find out things indirectly, um, or stumble upon it themselves, and it's just never really a good look for that to happen. To where maybe the spouse is wondering what other secrets are they hiding. and that
Mhm.
kind of creates a, you know, air of suspicion. Um, so I just feel like that's wildly important. And unfortunately, me and Susie, we only dated for a couple months before we got married. So there wasn't really time to unpack all of those problems, which made the first couple years of our marriage more difficult than it would be if we dated longer, because those situations would have came up. Um, and those are situations that came up in my relationship prior to that I somewhat walked through and dealt with Krista, but they still had to deal with that with Susie also. So I don't know. It at least helped my relationship a ton. And now like there's literally I feel like almost zero guilt or shame like sharing my problems with Susie. Like she doesn't judge me for it. She loves me. Like she's gonna, call me on my BS when it's there. And when I'm being like hard on myself or unreasonable, she's gonna be like, dude, take a step back, like give yourself some credit here. Like or things are okay. Like even if it's just simply reassuring, it's it's something that I think you need to hear and be honest about. And as guys, I feel like that's a huge like it's a not normal for guys to be completely honest with their spouses like that, especially when it comes to like I'm dealing with problems, like I'm gonna handle these problems, like this is my issue to deal with, this is like I just need to grit my teeth and put up with it and deal with it and blah blah blah. I'm like, to an extent, yeah, but at the end of the day, your wife should know you're fighting that battle, at least that it's there and it's going on. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that? True?
Not, I have nothing else to add.
No caveat?
No caveat.
Wow. I'm impressed. Yeah, I was expecting like, well, actually, the current biblical and but yeah,
Actually, neckbeard, but yeah.
neckbeard, Reddit mod.
Right. No, I agree. There's many instances in which I was not honest with my wife in a lot of different areas, whether it's something little or big, and it's always uh, good overall. Some of it's been terrible. Some of it she's just kind of chuckling and be like, "Why don't you just tell me you're so dumb?" But overall, I think it's better. And so, anything that I struggle with now, she knows of, is
Hmm.
aware of. Um, and she is like, I think because we're a team, she's the first line of defense. And same thing, if she's struggling with something, I know of it. Now, I struggle so much more, I think, than her with regards to my spiritual life. She does, but I think she struggles more. I hope she's okay with me saying this. Probably emotionally in some areas than I do. At least she used to. Not necessarily now. I think after having Millie, it's really grounded our relationship in a lot of different ways. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I just generally disagree. Or I generally agree.
Yeah.
But we should also wrap it up because I'm tired. So
Oh gosh, it's 11 o'clock. Holy cow! You don't even have work tomorrow, dude.
it's 12 here.
Oh yeah, we're only an hour apart. Well, it's 1 o'clock here, and I have to work at 7. But yeah, we can wrap it up. I think
That's,
the last thing we really haven't touched on, honestly, is sex. Do you want to talk about it?
I guess that would be its own episode.
We don't need a whole
But
episode to talk about that, do
that
we?
takes special care, I think, and we have to be very careful with our words. Or at least I would like to, out of honor for our spouses. But I think it would be its own episode if we want to tackle that.
I mean, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. Like your job is to please your spouse, and their job is to please you, and you should enjoy that, I
I think that
guess.
part's straightforward.
Yeah.
It's the
Um,
actual active activity that is a little bit, like, we can all agree with the purpose and the motivation for it, but, I think the troubleshooting issues is very difficult, or can not doesn't always it's not always difficult, but, it can get difficult, especially if you don't communicate about it and if you don't know each other's baggage and stuff like that. All of that comes into the mix. So that's why I think it would deserve its own episode
hmm.
if we want to do it. So, but I want to
He's like, I'm done.
go.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll think about it, but I don't know. To me, it's really simple and not complicated. But also, it's hard to. And I have like no issues with it with Susie. Never have like no struggles really. Like we're very compatible. Have good chemistry. Like it's just smooth sailing. So to me, it's really easy. But I know of other couples that struggle with compatibility issues or desire issues um, with what they're comfortable with versus what they're not comfortable with. So I don't know. It's a more complicated issue that I'm not really aware of necessarily. Don't personally have a problem with in my relationship. So it's like there's probably more nuance there than I'm considering. But I don't care to have that conversation necessarily. So I don't know, I guess we'll see what you feel like doing. But Cole, can we expect another episode soon before you go back to school about the other topics you want to talk about? Or are we gonna have to wait?
I have a podcast on Monday. And maybe do a podcast on Tuesday,
Next Tuesday?
so 27th. Yeah,
Okay.
same time probably.
I'm down. So that'll
But I'll let you know.
yeah, if we do it, do the Frankfurt style cases and I don't know the other word you said
More knowledge.
foreknowledge. I don't even know what to expect with that. So, but yeah, I'll upload this quick, get a nice little Christmas couples. What do you call it? Uh, what would we call this? Discussion, advice. I don't even know if it was advice or ramblings. So I don't know. Let's just do code word kiwi. Haven't ate a kiwi in years, but they're so good. So yeah, we need to start dropping these in the middle of the episode so people don't cheat. But we have one winner so far. They won a very secretive prize that they don't even know about yet. I don't have a prize. I don't even know about it yet either. But we have had one person say the code word. So closing thoughts, Colton, are we good?
We're good.
All right. See you guys. Have a very Merry Christmas. Enjoy it. Be safe.